My name is Ashley Peterson, and at 34, I finally achieved my dream of owning a beautiful home in the suburbs of Boston. After years as a tech executive, I saved enough for the $2 million property that represented everything I had worked for. What should have been the happiest day of my life turned into a nightmare when my sister Jessica made a shocking announcement during my housewarming party that left everyone stunned, including me. Before I continue with my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and if you enjoy family drama, hit that subscribe button for more stories like mine. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, my family was relatively normal on the surface. We never had extravagant things, but my parents always made sure we had what we needed. My relationship with my sister Jessica was what you might call complicated. Being 4 years older than me, Jessica always took on a somewhat maternal role in my life. She would help me with homework, defend me against bullies at school, and even let me borrow her clothes occasionally, despite our mother telling her she didn't have to. As we grew older, our paths diverged significantly. Jessica followed what my parents considered the traditional route. She met Mike, her now husband, during her sophomore year of college. By 23, they were married, and by 30, she had given birth to 4 beautiful daughters, Emily, Olivia, Sophia, and Ava, now aged 12, 10, 8, and 5. Jessica dropped out of college when she got pregnant with Emily, and Mike worked as a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company. They weren't poor by any means, but supporting 4 children on a single income wasn't easy. I, on the other hand, chose a different path. I focused intensely on my education, earning a full scholarship to MIT, where I studied computer science. While Jessica was changing diapers, I was interning at tech startups. When she was decorating her modest 3-bedroom home, I was accepting my first executive position at a promising tech company. My career progression was something I worked extraordinarily hard for. I started as a junior developer and worked 80-hour weeks for years. I missed family gatherings to meet deadlines. I sacrificed dating and a social life to climb the corporate ladder. By 28, I became the youngest female chief technology officer in my company's history. By 32, I was headhunted by a larger tech firm with an offer I couldn't refuse, doubling my already substantial salary. Through all those years, I lived modestly. I had a nice but small apartment in the city, drove a practical car, and invested most of my earnings. My one indulgence was travel, taking 2 international trips yearly to recharge. All the while, I was saving for something special that represented success on my own terms, a home that was entirely mine. When I finally found the perfect property, I knew immediately it was the one, a beautiful 5-bedroom colonial-style home in a prestigious suburb of Boston, sitting on 2 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. It had everything I had dreamed of: a gourmet kitchen with marble countertops, a home office with built-in bookshelves, a sunroom overlooking a garden, a swimming pool, and a master suite that felt like a luxury hotel. The $2 million price tag was substantial, but I had saved diligently. I could afford it without stretching myself financially thin. When I signed those closing papers, I felt a sense of accomplishment that was indescribable. This house represented every late night, every missed holiday, every sacrifice I had made to get here. I had plans for each room in the house. The master bedroom was my sanctuary, with a sitting area and spa-like bathroom. One bedroom would be my home office, allowing me to work remotely when needed. Another would be a dedicated guest room for when friends visited. The 4th bedroom would be a fitness room with a treadmill and weights. The 5th I wasn't sure about yet, but I thought perhaps a library or a craft room eventually. Planning the housewarming party was almost as exciting as buying the house itself. I wanted to share my joy with everyone I cared about. I invited about 40 people, colleagues from work, friends from college, neighbors I had already met, and of course my family. My parents, now in their 60s, were proud but somewhat reserved about my purchase. "It's an awful lot of house for just one person," my mother commented when I first showed her pictures. But I brushed it off as generational differences. Jessica and her family were, of course, invited. When I called to tell her about the house, her congratulations seemed genuine, though somewhat subdued. "That's great, Ash, we'd love to see it," she said. I noticed she didn't ask many questions about the house itself, which struck me as odd, given how much she usually loved discussing home decor and renovations. In the weeks leading up to the party, I spent every spare moment making the house perfect. I hired an interior decorator to help furnish the main spaces, though I left several rooms minimally furnished until I decided exactly how I wanted them. I ordered catering from an upscale local restaurant, bought premium wines, and even hired a bartender for the evening. The morning of the housewarming, I felt a sense of nervous excitement. This party wasn't just about showing off my new home. It was about establishing roots, creating a space where I could build a future, and celebrating a major milestone in my life. Little did I know, the day would become memorable for entirely different reasons. The morning of the housewarming party, I woke up at 6:00 a.m., too excited to sleep any longer. Even though I had hired a cleaning service the day before, I still found myself going through each room, adjusting pillows, straightening picture frames, and making sure everything was perfect. The caterers were scheduled to arrive at 3:00 p.m., and guests would start showing up at 5:00 p.m. By noon, the floral arrangements had been delivered and placed strategically throughout the house: white lilies in the entryway, colorful wildflowers in the sunroom, and elegant roses for the dining table. The bartender called to confirm the alcohol delivery had arrived, and the rental company dropped off additional chairs and serving platters. At 2:30, my mother arrived an hour earlier than I had asked her to come. "I thought you might need help," she said, though I had everything under control. As I gave her a tour of the fully furnished rooms, I noticed her eyes lingering on the empty spaces. "What are you going to do with all these bedrooms?" she asked, standing in the doorway of what would eventually be my home gym, currently containing only a yoga mat and a few free weights. "I have plans for each one," I explained. "This will be a home gym that one's my office, the blue room is for guests." She nodded absently. "It just seems like a lot of wasted space for one person. Your sister could really use this much room with the girls growing up." I changed the subject, asking her to help arrange the serving platters in the kitchen while the caterers began setting up. I was used to these subtle comparisons and had learned to let them roll off my back. By 5:00 p.m., the first guests began to arrive. My colleague Chris and his wife brought a beautiful houseplant as a gift. My college roommate Megan drove in from New Hampshire, marveling at the winding driveway and elegant facade of the house. "You've done so well for yourself, Ashley," she said, giving me a tight hug. More guests filtered in over the next hour. My father arrived, giving me a proud smile and a rare hug. "The house is beautiful, sweetheart," he said simply before heading to the bar for a scotch. Neighbors I had met briefly during the moving process came bearing bottles of wine and small housewarming gifts. By 6:30, the house was buzzing with conversation and laughter. The caterers circulated with trays of appetizers, the bartender was busy mixing drinks, and everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time. I had just finished showing a group of colleagues the backyard and pool area when I checked my watch, realizing Jessica and her family still hadn't arrived. I texted her, "Everything okay?" "Party started an hour ago." Her response came quickly. "Running late, Mike had to finish something for work, be there soon." At 7:00 p.m., just as I was considering starting dinner without them, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jessica, Mike, and their 4 daughters on my doorstep. Jessica looked stressed, her hair hastily pulled back, wearing a dress that seemed thrown on at the last minute. Mike stood behind her with a tight smile, holding a gift bag. The girls, by contrast, were bursting with energy. "Sorry we're late," Jessica said, giving me a quick hug. "The girls were excited and took forever to get ready." "Aunt Ashley, your house is like a castle," exclaimed 10-year-old Olivia, pushing past me into the foyer. "Girls, remember what we talked about. No running in Aunt Ashley's house," Mike called after them, but Emily, Sophia, and Ava were already following their sister, their voices echoing through the high-ceilinged entryway. I led Jessica and Mike to the backyard where most of the guests were gathered. Jessica seemed distracted, her eyes darting around, taking in every detail of the house. Mike made polite conversation with my colleagues, but I noticed he kept glancing at Jessica with a concerned expression. "Would you like a tour?" I offered. Absolutely, Jessica replied quickly. The girls are probably exploring already anyway. As I led them through the house, Jessica's comments became increasingly pointed. In the gourmet kitchen, this is bigger than our entire first floor. In the master bedroom, your closet could fit our girls' bunk beds. In one of the empty bedrooms, this would be perfect for the twins. They've been sharing a room that's half this size. I noticed Mike growing increasingly uncomfortable with each comment. When we reached my home office, Jessica lingered, running her hand over the custom-built desk. You know this room gets the best afternoon light. It would make a wonderful playroom. Jessica, Mike said quietly, a warning in his tone. She ignored him, moving to the window. And it's right next to what could be the girls' bedroom. Perfect setup, really. Something in her tone made me uneasy. I guided them back downstairs where dinner was about to be served. The caterers had set up a buffet in the dining room, and guests were beginning to fill their plates. I noticed my mother had corralled Jessica's daughters, helping them with their food. The youngest, Ava, was sitting on my mother's lap, sauce already staining the front of her dress. As everyone settled around the large dining table and several smaller tables set up in the adjacent living room, I felt a moment of pure happiness. My home was filled with people I cared about. Everyone was enjoying themselves, and I had created this moment through my own hard work. If only that feeling could have lasted. Once everyone was seated with their food, I stood up at the head of the dining table, champagne glass in hand. The conversation gradually quieted as guests turned their attention to me. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I began feeling a warm glow of accomplishment. This house represents years of hard work and dreams, and having you all here to share it with me means everything. Cheers to new beginnings and good friends to share them with. Glasses clinked around the table as people smiled and took sips of their drinks. Just as I was about to sit down, Jessica abruptly stood up from her seat across the table. Her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor, causing several guests to wince. Since we're making announcements, she said, her voice carrying across the now silent room, I have some exciting news of my own to share. Mike's head snapped up, his expression a mixture of alarm and resignation. My mother, still holding little Ava, leaned forward with interest. Jessica took a deep breath, a strange smile forming on her face. Mike and I have decided to make a big change. We're selling our house. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. I felt confused, but also relieved that her announcement wasn't something more dramatic. Congratulations, I said. Are you moving to a different neighborhood? Jessica's smile widened as she looked directly at me. Not exactly. We're moving in here with you. The glass nearly slipped from my hand. What? We're moving in with you, she repeated louder this time. The girls need more space and you have all these empty rooms. It just makes sense. The room fell into a stunned silence. I stared at my sister, certain this must be some kind of bizarre joke, but her expression remained determined, almost defiant. Jessica, I began, but my mother's voice cut through. Isn't it wonderful? She beamed, bouncing Ava on her knee. The girls will have so much more room to grow, and Ashley won't be rattling around in this big house all by herself. Several guests, mostly family friends who had known us since childhood, started nodding and smiling. Someone even began to clap, and to my horror, others joined in. The applause spread around the table like a wave, punctuated by congratulatory murmurs. That's so generous of you, Ashley, said my mother's friend Karen. Family taking care of family, that's what it's all about, added my father's golf buddy, raising his glass in a toast. I stood, frozen champagne glass still in hand, as the reality of what was happening washed over me. My sister had just announced she was moving into my house without ever discussing it with me, and somehow I was being congratulated for it. Jessica's daughters caught the excitement of the adults around them. We're going to live here? Emily asked, her 12-year-old eyes wide with wonder. Yes, sweetie, Jessica confirmed. And Ashley has all this extra space and she wants to share it with us. I get my own room, shouted Sophia, the 8-year-old, jumping up from her seat. Girls, settle down, Mike said quietly, but the damage was done. The children's excitement was palpable, adding another layer of complication to the already bewildering situation. My mother set Ava down and stood up. "Let's talk about the arrangements," she said as if this was a done deal. "The girls could take the East Wing bedrooms, and Ashley, you wouldn't mind moving your office to the sunroom, would you? It gets such lovely light." Jessica nodded enthusiastically. "And we could convert that extra bedroom into a playroom for the girls. The backyard is perfect for them to run around in, and of course they'll love the pool in summer." I finally found my voice. Just wait a minute, we haven't discussed any of this." But Jessica continued as if she hadn't heard me. "We'll need to rearrange some of the furniture, of course. That dining table is much too formal for the girls, and we'll need child-proof locks on the cabinets in the kitchen." Guests were beginning to look uncomfortable, glancing between Jessica and me with uncertain expressions. My colleague Chris caught my eye from across the room, raising his eyebrows in a silent question. I had no answer for him. "Jessica." I tried again, my voice stronger this time. "This is the first I'm hearing about any of this." "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Ashley," my mother interjected. "We've all known this house is too big for just you. It makes perfect sense for Jessica and her family to move in. The girls need the space much more than you do." Jessica pulled out her phone. "I've actually been looking at some bunk beds for the girls' room. What do you think of these?" She held up her screen, showing a Pinterest page of children's bedroom furniture. Mike cleared his throat. "Maybe we should discuss this privately," he suggested, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "There's nothing to discuss," my mother declared. "Family helps family. That's how we raised you girls." The party atmosphere had completely evaporated. Some guests were engaged in awkward small talk, while others were clearly eavesdropping on our family drama. My carefully planned housewarming had derailed spectacularly. "Let me show you which bedroom I want," Olivia announced, grabbing her younger sister's hand and pulling her toward the stairs. "Girls, wait," I called after them, but they were already halfway up the staircase, their excited footsteps echoing through my new home. Jessica turned to follow them. "Come on, I'll show you the layout I'm thinking of. The twins can share the blue room, and Emily deserves her own space now that she's almost a teenager." As they disappeared upstairs, I stood in my dining room surrounded by guests and half-eaten meals, feeling as though I had stepped into someone else's life. My dream home, my sanctuary, was being parceled out before my eyes, and somehow I was being cast as the villain for questioning it. I excused myself from the remaining guests at the table and quickly followed Jessica, my mother, and the girls upstairs. By the time I reached the second floor, Olivia and Sophia were already jumping on the bed in what I had designated as the guest room. "Girls, please stop jumping on the bed," I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the anger and confusion building inside me. "Jessica, we need to talk about this. Privately," I added, gesturing toward my home office. "Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of family," Jessica replied dismissively, opening closet doors and examining storage space. "These closets are huge. The girls will have plenty of room for their things." My mother was in the next bedroom, already measuring the windows with her eyes. "These rooms need more colorful curtains, too sterile for children." I took a deep breath, struggling to maintain my composure. "I never agreed to any of this. This is my house, and I just moved in myself." Jessica turned to face me, her expression hardening. "You have 5 bedrooms, Ashley. 5. For one person. Do you know how cramped we are in our 3-bedroom house? The twins share a room the size of your master bathroom." "That's not my problem," I said, immediately regretting how harsh it sounded. My mother gasped. "Ashley Peterson, I did not raise you to be so selfish." "It's not selfish to want to live in my own house by myself," I defended. "I worked hard for this. I saved for years. And we haven't—" Jessica's voice rose. "Mike works 60 hours a week. I juggle 4 kids and a part-time job. But we're drowning, Ashley." For the first time, I noticed the dark circles under my sister's eyes, the strain in her voice. Something was seriously wrong. "What's going on?" I asked, lowering my voice. "Why are you really selling your house?" Jessica's composure cracked slightly. "We're underwater on the mortgage. The housing market crashed in our neighborhood after that chemical plant opened nearby. We owe more than it's worth and the bank is threatening foreclosure. This was news to me. Why didn't you tell me you were having financial problems? Because you never ask, Jessica exploded. You're so wrapped up in your perfect life and career. When was the last time you asked about our finances or offered to help with the girls, or did anything that wasn't about your success? Her words stung because there was some truth to them. I had been focused on my own path, perhaps, at the expense of staying connected to my sister's struggles. That doesn't mean I agreed to have you move in, I countered. This is something we should have discussed privately, not announced at my housewarming party. My mother stepped between us. Ashley, when I was growing up, family took care of family without question. Your grandmother lived with us for 15 years. Your uncle stayed with us when he lost his job. That's what we do. Times were different then, I argued, and those arrangements were discussed beforehand, not sprung on someone during a party. We did try to discuss it, Jessica said. I called you 3 times last week, but you were too busy with work and moving to talk more than 5 minutes. She wasn't wrong. I had been distracted rushing her off the phone to deal with contractors and deliveries. Footsteps on the stairs announced Mike's arrival. He looked uncomfortable as he entered the room. Everything okay up here? He asked, though it was obvious things were far from okay. Did you know about this plan? I asked him directly. Mike hesitated, glancing at Jessica. We discussed the possibility, but I thought we were going to ask you privately this weekend. Jessica shot him a look. We don't have time for that. The bank called yesterday. We have 30 days. 30 days until what? I demanded. Until they start foreclosure proceedings. Jessica admitted, her voice breaking. We're 3 months behind on payments. Mike's commission structure changed and my hours were cut at work, and with the girls' activities and medical bills. So you decided the solution was to ambush me at my party and announce you're moving in. I was incredulous. You have the space, Jessica shouted, gesturing around the bedroom. You have the money. You have everything. Would it kill you to share some of it? My mother nodded in agreement. Your sister sacrificed so much for you growing up. She watched you while I worked night shifts. She helped you with college applications. She's always been there for you. The guilt trip was familiar territory in our family dynamics. Jessica's sacrifices were frequently cited whenever expectations were placed on me. That doesn't give her the right to claim my house, I insisted. It's just temporary, Jessica said, though her earlier announcement had suggested nothing temporary about the arrangement. Just until we get back on our feet. And how long will that be? I asked. A month, a year, 5 years. Jessica didn't answer, which was an answer enough. One of the girls, I think it was Emily, appeared in the doorway. Mom, can I have the room with the window seat? Before Jessica could answer, I interjected, No one is getting any rooms because no one is moving in without my agreement. Emily's face fell, and I immediately felt terrible. None of this was the children's fault. Now you're making the girls cry, my mother accused. Is your precious privacy worth hurting your nieces? The conversation was spiraling out of control. Downstairs, I could hear the murmur of guests, some probably wondering where their hostess had disappeared to. Jessica, this isn't just about space, I tried to explain. This is about boundaries and respect. We don't have time for your boundaries, Jessica snapped. We need a solution now. Tom finally spoke up. Jessica, Ashley's right. We should have discussed this with her first. Jessica whirled on him. Whose side are you on? Do you want to see your daughters homeless? Of course not, he said quietly. But this isn't the way to handle it. My mother threw up her hands. I can't believe what I'm hearing. My own daughter with all this space and money refusing to help her sister in need. The accusation hit hard. Was I being selfish? Would it really be so terrible to share my home with my sister's family, at least temporarily? But then I remembered all the times in the past when temporary arrangements with Jessica had stretched indefinitely, all the times my boundaries had been crossed with the excuse of family obligation. I never said I wouldn't help, I clarified. But moving in together is not the only solution, and it's not one I'm comfortable with. Jessica laughed bitterly. Of course you're not comfortable with it. Heaven forbid your perfect life be disrupted by children and chaos. That's not fair, I began, but she cut me off. You know what's not fair? That you have all this. She gestured around the spacious bedroom, while my children are crammed into rooms the size of closets. That you take luxury vacations while we can barely afford a day at the beach. That you get to focus on your career while I had to give up college to raise a family. There it was. The long simmering resentment that had always lingered beneath the surface of our relationship. This wasn't just about housing, it was about the different paths our lives had taken and the comparisons that had been made along the way. I worked hard for what I have, I said quietly. I made different choices. You think I don't work hard? Jessica's voice rose again. Try raising 4 children. Try keeping a household together on a shrinking budget. I never said that, I defended. But your choices are not my responsibility. As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew I had crossed a line. Jessica's face flushed with anger. My choices? You think my children were just choices I made to inconvenience you? They're family, Ashley. Your family. I didn't mean it like that. I backpedaled. Yes, you did, Jessica insisted. You've always thought you were better than me because you chose a career over a family. Well, not all of us had that luxury. The conversation had veered far from the original issue of them moving in, dredging up decades of complicated feelings between us. I needed to regain control of the situation. This isn't productive, I said. Let's go back downstairs, enjoy the rest of the party, and discuss this tomorrow when we've all calmed down. There's nothing to discuss, Jessica declared. We've already started packing. The realtor is coming on Monday to list our house. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You've already started packing without even asking me. We knew you'd say yes, my mother interjected, because that's what family does. I looked from my mother to my sister, finally seeing clearly the pattern that had defined our relationship for years. The assumption that my needs were secondary, that my boundaries could be crossed in the name of family obligation, that my success meant I owed them whatever they asked for. In that moment, something shifted inside me. A lifetime of acquiescing to keep the peace gave way to a determination to stand my ground. As we stood in the upstairs hallway of my new home, the tension so thick it felt hard to breathe. Jessica suddenly crumpled onto the edge of the bed. Her shoulders began to shake as she covered her face with her hands. You don't understand how bad things are, she said through her tears. We're drowning, Ashley. Completely drowning. Despite my anger, my heart ached seeing my sister break down. Mike moved to sit beside her, placing a tentative hand on her back. The truth is, he said quietly, meeting my eyes, we're not just behind on the mortgage. We've maxed out our credit cards. We've got medical debt from when Sophia broke her arm last year, and our insurance didn't cover all the specialists. Jessica's car needs transmission work we can't afford. My mother sat on Jessica's other side, putting an arm around her. They've been struggling for years, Ashley. Too proud to ask for help until now. I leaned against the doorframe, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. Why didn't you come to me sooner before things got this desperate? Jessica looked up, her face streaked with mascara. Because you're my little sister. I'm supposed to have my life together. I'm supposed to take care of you, not the other way around. The admission was startling. All these years, I'd thought Jessica viewed me as the selfish one, the one who chose career over family. I never considered she might feel shame about needing my help. But springing this on me during my housewarming party, I questioned. In front of everyone, Jessica wiped her eyes. I knew if we were alone, you'd find a way to say no gently. You'd offer money instead or suggestions for financial planners, but we need more than that. We need a home. I flashed back to our childhood, to all the times Jessica had protected me, helped me, put me first. The time she took the blame when I broke Mom's favorite vase. The summer she worked 2 jobs to help pay for my laptop for college. The countless hours she spent reviewing my college essays. But I also remembered the flip side of that relationship, the guilt trips, the expectation that I would always give in to whatever she needed, the subtle resentment of my success. One of Jessica's daughters, Olivia, came running into the room. "Mom, Aunt Ashley has a pool. Can we go swimming every day when we live here?" Jessica gave her daughter a watery smile. "We'll see, sweetie." "The kids are already packed," Mike admitted, looking uncomfortable. "They've each got a box of special things they want to bring. They're excited about it." The realization that they had gone this far, allowing their children to believe this was a done deal before ever discussing it with me, made my blood boil all over again. "You let them pack. You got their hopes up without even asking me." I was incredulous. "We didn't have a choice," Jessica insisted. "The bank called yesterday and gave us a final notice. 30 days to get current or they start foreclosure." "There are always choices," I countered. "You could have called me yesterday. We could have sat down privately and figured something out." My mother stood up, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Enough of this back and forth. I've already told the family you're taking them in. Your cousin Linda thinks it's wonderfully generous of you." "You told the extended family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Of course," my mother said. "Everyone's very impressed with you. For once, instead of just talking about your job." The comment stung, revealing how my mother really viewed my career accomplishments. "I've even told the girls they can bring their dog," Jessica added. "Dog? You never mentioned a dog." "I don't dislike animals, but I deliberately bought a house with pristine hardwood floors and expensive rugs." "He's part of the family," Jessica said defensively. "We couldn't leave him behind." Just then, I heard more footsteps on the stairs, and Sophia appeared at the door clutching a tablet. "Aunt Ashley, look what Mom designed for our house." She thrust the tablet into my hands. On the screen was a Pinterest board titled "New Home Renovations." I scrolled through it in stunned silence. Jessica had created a detailed plan for transforming my house, sliding barn doors for the living room bunk beds, in 2 of the bedrooms, a play area in what was currently my home office, child-friendly furniture to replace my carefully chosen pieces. "When did you make this?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I've been working on it for a few weeks," Jessica admitted. "Ever since we realized we couldn't keep our house." "A few weeks," I repeated. "You've known for weeks that you were in financial trouble, that you might lose your house, and you never once picked up the phone to have an honest conversation with me about it." "I tried," Jessica protested, "but you were always busy with work or the move." "Not too busy for something this important," I insisted. Mike stood up. "Look, this has gotten out of hand. Maybe we should go home, calm down, and discuss this tomorrow like adults." "There's nothing to discuss," my mother interjected. "Family helps family. End of story." "It's not that simple," I said. "This is my home. I get to decide who lives in it." Jessica's face hardened again. "So that's it. You're going to let your sister and her children become homeless because you want to preserve your perfect, pristine life." "That's not what I said," I defended. "There are other options we can explore." "Like what?" Jessica demanded. "We've explored every option. We've cut every expense we can. We've borrowed from Mike's parents already. We've taken on extra work. There's nowhere else to turn." "You could rent a smaller place," I suggested. "With what money? And our credit is shot from the late payments. No landlord will take us." "I could help with a down payment on a more affordable house," I offered. "In this market, there's nothing affordable within an hour of the girls' school, and we can't uproot them from their friends and activities." Every suggestion I made was met with a reason why it wouldn't work. It began to feel like Jessica had decided moving in with me was the only acceptable solution, and she wasn't willing to consider alternatives. The breaking point came when my mother said, "We'll need to clear out some of this furniture to make room for the girls' things. That glass coffee table is a hazard with children around." Something inside me snapped. This was my house, bought with my money, a sanctuary I had worked toward for years, and they were already planning to dismantle it before even securing my agreement. "Enough," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Everyone needs to stop making plans for my house without my consent." "It's just furniture, Ashley," my mother dismissed. "Things can be replaced. Family is what matters." "It's not just about the furniture," I insisted. It's about respect. It's about boundaries. None of you have shown either since you arrived tonight. Jessica stood up, her earlier vulnerability replaced by indignation. Boundaries. Your nieces are about to lose their home and you're worried about boundaries. Yes, I said simply. Because this pattern has played out our entire lives. You decide what you need from me, ambush me with it, and make me the villain if I don't immediately agree. That's not true, Jessica protested, but even Mike looked skeptical at that denial. It is true, I continued, and I've allowed it because it was easier than standing up for myself, but not this time, not with something this important. So you're saying no? Jessica's voice was dangerously quiet. You're refusing to help us. I'm saying I won't be manipulated into a living arrangement I never agreed to, I clarified. I'm saying I deserve to be consulted about decisions that affect my life and my home. Your home, Jessica repeated bitterly. That's all you care about, isn't it? Your precious home and your precious privacy. That's not fair, I began, but she cut me off. What's not fair is that my children might be homeless while their aunt has 4 empty bedrooms in her mansion. The accusation hung in the air between us. I looked from Jessica's angry face to my mother's disappointed one, to Mike's uncomfortable expression, to the confused faces of the girls hovering in the doorway. In that moment, I realized this was about more than just a housing arrangement. It was about standing up for myself, perhaps for the first time in my relationship with my family. It was about breaking a pattern that had defined us for decades. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I needed to do next. I think you should all go downstairs and rejoin the party, I said calmly. I need a moment alone. Running away from the problem won't solve anything, my mother chided. I'm not running away, I assured her. I'll be down in a minute. I just need to get something from my office. They filed out reluctantly, Jessica herding her daughters ahead of her. As they descended the stairs, I could hear my mother already making excuses to the guests for the extended absence of the hostess. Alone in the hallway, I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes, gathering my strength for what would come next. Then I walked purposefully to my home office and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. I took a moment alone in my office to collect myself, staring out the window at the manicured backyard I had been so excited to show off to my guests just hours earlier. The party downstairs had resumed a muted version of itself. I could hear occasional laughter and the clink of glasses, but the earlier festive atmosphere had evaporated. In the bottom drawer of my desk, beneath some folders, was a leather portfolio I had placed there just a week ago. I pulled it out, ran my fingers over the embossed surface, and took a deep breath. This was not how I had planned to handle things, but Jessica's ambush had forced my hand. I tucked the portfolio under my arm and headed downstairs, straightening my shoulders and lifting my chin. This was my house, I reminded myself. My life. My decision. The conversation in the living room hushed as I descended the staircase. My guests looked up with expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. Clearly, word of the upstairs drama had spread. Jessica sat on the couch, still looking tearful but defiant, surrounded by her daughters. My mother perched beside her, patting her hand sympathetically. Mike stood awkwardly near the fireplace, looking like he wished he could disappear into the stonework. I walked to the center of the room, setting the portfolio on the coffee table. I want to thank everyone for their patience. I began addressing the entire group. Family discussions can sometimes get emotional, as I'm sure you all understand. A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the room. My colleague Chris caught my eye and raised his glass slightly in a gesture of solidarity. Since this has become an impromptu family meeting, I continued, I want to thank you all for being witnesses to what I'm about to share. Rachel frowned, confusion replacing some of the anger on her face. What are you talking about? I opened the portfolio and removed a set of documents, keeping them face down on the table for the moment. About 3 months ago, I received a call from Mark Johnson, Mike's colleague at the pharmaceutical company. Mike's head snapped up in surprise. Mark called you. I nodded. He was concerned. He mentioned that you'd been asking around for loans, that things were tight at home. He thought perhaps I could help, but didn't want to overstep by telling me directly. Jessica's face flushed. He had no right. Maybe not, I conceded. But I'm glad he did, because after that call I did some research. I turned over the first document, sliding it across the coffee table toward Jessica and Mike. This is a copy of the mortgage statement for your house. You're not just 3 months behind as you said upstairs. You're 5 months behind, and the bank has already begun foreclosure proceedings. Mike looked away, shame evident in his expression. Jessica's mouth opened, then closed without speaking. The second thing I learned, I continued turning over another document, is that your house isn't worth what you think it is. The chemical plant hasn't just affected your property value, it's made your house almost unsellable in the current market. How did you get these documents? Jessica finally managed. I have a friend who works in real estate finance, I explained. Once I understood how serious the situation was, I wanted to help, but in my way, not by having you ambush me at a party. I turned over a third document, this one bearing the letterhead of my attorney. So 3 weeks ago, I purchased your mortgage debt from the bank. A stunned silence fell over the room. Even the guests who had been pretending not to eavesdrop were now openly watching the drama unfold. You what? Jessica whispered. I bought your mortgage, I repeated. The bank was happy to sell the debt to avoid a messy foreclosure. I now hold the lien on your house. My mother's eyes widened. You own their house? In a manner of speaking, yes. I kept my voice calm and even. I was planning to tell you this weekend privately. I was going to offer you a solution that respected everyone's needs and boundaries. Mike stepped forward, his expression a mixture of confusion and cautious hope. What kind of solution? I pulled out the final document from the portfolio, a rent-to-own agreement. You stay in your house, but instead of paying the bank, you pay me a reduced monthly amount that you can actually afford. We structure it so that after 5 years, you have the option to buy the house back from me at a fair market value with a portion of your rent payments counting as a down payment. Jessica stared at the document, speechless for perhaps the first time in her adult life. This arrangement, I continued, gives you stability. The girls don't have to change schools or leave their friends. You don't have to cram into someone else's space, and I don't have to give up the home I just bought for myself. You've been planning this for weeks, Jessica finally asked. Without telling us, I met her gaze steadily. Yes, just like you've been planning to move into my house for weeks without telling me. The parallel wasn't lost on Mike, who let out a short, rueful laugh. She's got a point, Jess. My mother, however, was not so easily convinced. But why not just let them move in with you? There's more than enough space and families should stay together. Because that's not what any of us truly wants, I replied firmly. Jessica and Mike need their own space to parent their children as they see fit. The girls need stability, not a temporary solution, and I need the home I worked so hard to create for myself. I turned back to Jessica. I was going to surprise you this weekend, take you out to lunch, explain everything, give you the good news that you wouldn't lose your house. Instead, you decided to ambush me in front of all my guests and try to guilt me into an arrangement that wouldn't have been healthy for any of us. Jessica's face crumpled, the defiance giving way to something that looked like shame. I was desperate, she whispered. I didn't know what else to do. You could have trusted me, I said simply. You could have asked for help directly instead of trying to manipulate me. Mike moved to sit beside his wife, taking the document and scanning it quickly. This is incredibly generous, Ashley. It's what family does, I said, deliberately echoing my mother's earlier words. We help each other, but with respect for each other's boundaries and needs. The room had gone completely silent. Even my mother seemed at a loss for words, her earlier certainty shaken by this unexpected turn of events. One of Jessica's daughters, I think it was Emily, tugged at her mother's sleeve. Does this mean we're not moving to Aunt Ashley's castle? Jessica looked at her daughter, then at me, understanding finally dawning in her eyes. No, sweetheart. It means we get to stay in our own home. Aunt Ashley has helped us keep our house. Oh, Emily said, clearly disappointed. But I wanted my own big room with a window seat. Despite everything, I couldn't help but smile at her innocent honesty. "You can come visit any time, Emily. The guest room with the window seat will be waiting for you." The tension in the room began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious relief. Guests who had been frozen in uncomfortable witness to our family drama slowly resumed their conversations. Mike was still reading through the document, occasionally nodding with apparent approval. Jessica stood up and approached me, her eyes red from crying but clear. "Why?" she asked quietly. "After everything I said upstairs, after how I behaved, why would you do this for us?" I considered my answer carefully. "Because you're my sister. Because those girls are my nieces. Because despite everything, we're family." I paused. "But also because this solution respects everyone's needs and boundaries. It's help without codependent support, without sacrifice." For a moment, I thought she might argue further, falling back on the familiar patterns that had defined our relationship for so long. Instead, she surprised me by nodding slowly. "I need to think about this," she said. "Talk it over with Mike properly." "Of course," I agreed. "There's no rush. The papers are already filed with the bank. Your house is secure." My mother finally found her voice. "I still think families should stay together," she insisted, but with less conviction than before. "We are together, Mom," I said gently. "Just not under the same roof. And that's okay." As Jessica returned to Mike's side to discuss the documents in hushed tones, my guests began to approach me, some offering congratulations on my new home, others making polite excuses to leave after witnessing such an intensely personal scene. I thanked them all graciously, doing my best to salvage what remained of my housewarming party. Chris, my colleague, was one of the last to leave. "That was quite a power move," he commented as I walked him to the door. "It wasn't meant to be," I admitted. "I just wanted to help on my terms, not theirs." He nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes standing your ground is the kindest thing you can do for everyone involved." As I closed the door behind the last guest, I turned to face my family still gathered in my living room. The house that had been full of laughter and conversation just hours ago now felt cavernous and quiet, but it was still mine. And for the first time in our adult relationship, I felt that Jessica truly saw me not just as her little sister who owed her, but as an equal worthy of respect. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Years of established patterns couldn't be broken in a single evening. But as I looked at the documents on the coffee table, I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. That maybe, just maybe, we could build something healthier than what we'd had before. After the last guest departed, I found myself alone in my new home. The remnants of the party were scattered around me, like evidence of a life interrupted: half-empty wine glasses on side tables, napkins crumpled beside plates of partially eaten food, a forgotten scarf draped over a chair back. The caterers had packed up and left, and my family had gone home to digest everything that had happened. I moved through the room slowly, straightening cushions and gathering glasses, not yet ready to go to bed despite the emotional exhaustion. My mind kept replaying the events of the evening, wondering if I had handled things the right way. The next morning, I woke to a text from Jessica. "Can we talk, just the two of us?" We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes the following afternoon. Jessica looked tired but calmer than she had at the party. "I want to apologize," she said after we had ordered coffee. "I shouldn't have ambushed you like that. It was manipulative and unfair." Her apology surprised me. In our family, apologizing had never come easily. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "I'm sorry too for springing my solution on you in front of everyone." She shook her head. "No, you were backed into a corner. I gave you no choice." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of decades of complicated feelings between us. "Mike and I talked about your offer all night," Jessica finally said. "We want to accept it. It's more than generous, and it gives us a chance to get back on our feet without uprooting the girls." Relief washed over me. "I'm glad. I really do want to help Jessica, just not by sacrificing the independence I've worked so hard for." "I understand that now," she admitted. "I think I've been jealous of your freedom, your success. It's easier to label you as selfish than to acknowledge my own resentment. Her honesty was refreshing, opening a door to a level of communication we'd never had before. And I've probably been insensitive to your struggles. I acknowledged, focused on my career to the exclusion of everything else. We've both made choices, Jessica said, echoing my words from the night before, but without the defensiveness. Different choices, but neither better nor worse than the other. Over the next few weeks, we formalized the arrangement with my attorney. The terms were fair. They would pay what they could afford now, with a gradual increase as Mike's work situation improved. After 5 years, they would have the option to buy the house back, with a significant portion of their payments counting toward equity. My mother was the hardest to win over. She still believed that families should live together, share resources without question. In my day, we didn't need all these legal documents and boundaries, she complained during a family dinner. Times change, Mom, I said gently. This arrangement gives everyone what they need: dignity, independence, and security. Slowly, reluctantly, she came to accept that this was how it would be, especially when she saw how Jessica and Mike's relationship improved once the immediate financial pressure was lifted. I began therapy around this time, working through the complex feelings of guilt and obligation that had shaped so much of my relationship with my family. My therapist helped me see that establishing boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary for healthy relationships. You can love someone deeply and still need your own space, she reminded me during one session. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges that allow us to connect safely. 3 months after the disastrous housewarming, I invited Jessica and her family for dinner at my home. This time, the visit was relaxed without ulterior motives or hidden agendas. The girls explored the house with my permission, and yes, they even got to swim in the pool. "Your aunt's house is pretty cool, huh?" I overheard Mike saying to Olivia as they looked out at the backyard. "Yeah," she agreed. "But I like our house too. I have all my friends there." Their simple exchange confirmed what I had believed all along, that what the girls really needed wasn't more square footage, but stability and security in the home they already loved. Jessica and I developed a new tradition: monthly sister dinners, just the two of us alternating between our homes. During these dinners, we talked openly about things we'd never discussed before: our hopes, fears, regrets, and dreams. I learned about her struggles with motherhood, her abandoned aspirations for a career in interior design. She learned about my loneliness sometimes, my questions about whether I'd focus too much on a career at the expense of building a family of my own. "It's never too late," she told me during one such dinner 6 months after the housewarming. "Look at us rebuilding our relationship after years of miscommunication. Some things are worth the wait." The relationship with my nieces blossomed in unexpected ways. With the pressure off, I found I genuinely enjoyed spending time with them. Emily, with her artistic talent, often came over to paint in my sunroom. Sophia, the athlete of the family, loved swimming in my pool. I became the aunt I had always wanted to be, not burdened by obligation, but connected through genuine affection. As for my dream home, it remained my sanctuary, but I learned to share it in ways that felt good to me. I hosted family dinners once a month. I invited the girls for occasional sleepovers in the guest room with the window seat that had so captivated Emily. I even adopted a cat, deciding that perhaps my pristine home could benefit from a little bit of chaos after all. A year after the fateful housewarming party, we gathered again in my home, a much smaller group, this time just family. As we sat around the dining table, Jessica raised her glass in a toast. "To Ashley," she said, "who taught us that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set a boundary." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible in my family relationships. "And to new beginnings," I added, "it's never too late to change the patterns of the past." Later that evening, as I stood in my kitchen loading the dishwasher, my mother approached me. She had been quieter than usual during dinner, observant rather than directive. "You know," she said, leaning against the counter, "I was wrong that night." I paused a plate in midair. "About what?" "About family always needing to live together, share everything," she sighed. "Your way turned out better for everyone. Jessica and Mike have their dignity and independence, the girls have stability, and you have your beautiful home just as you deserve. Coming from my mother, this was nothing short of revolutionary. I set down the plate and turned to face her fully. Thank you for saying that, Mom. It means a lot. She nodded, looking around my kitchen with new eyes. You've created something beautiful here, Ashley. Not just this house, but this new way for our family to support each other while respecting each other's space. As she left that night, she hugged me tighter than usual. I'm proud of you, she whispered, words I had waited a lifetime to hear. The journey wasn't over, of course. Old patterns had a way of reasserting themselves in moments of stress or crisis. But we had laid a new foundation, one built on mutual respect rather than obligation and guilt. My home remained my sanctuary, the physical manifestation of all I had worked for. But I came to understand that true security wasn't found in square footage or property deeds. It was found in relationships where love and respect coexisted, where helping didn't mean sacrificing self, where family bonds were strengthened by healthy boundaries rather than weakened by resentment. Standing on my back porch that night, watching the stars appear one by one above my beautiful yard, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with material possessions. I had not only claimed physical space for myself in this world, but emotional space as well, the right to define my own life, even within the complex web of family relationships. A practical lesson. This story teaches us a crucial lesson about boundaries. Healthy boundaries are not selfish. They are a form of self-respect and are essential for any relationship to thrive, especially within families. Helping a loved one doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your own well-being, your home, or your financial security. True support respects the dignity and independence of everyone involved. It's about finding creative, respectful solutions, not giving in to emotional manipulation or guilt. What's your experience with family boundaries? Have you ever had to stand your ground even when it was difficult? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life lessons. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and others is to clearly define where you end and they begin. Thank you for listening to my story today. Until next time, take care of yourselves.